I'm Mandy Garner, editor of Workingmums.co.uk. Welcome to today's Careers Week's session. We're here with Joy Foster, founder of Tech Pixies. Tech Pixies is a coaching and training company that has almost 1,000 alumni students over the last few years. Tech Pixies does live coaching, it does social media coaching and training, and also business coaching. So today we're going to find out a little bit more about how it came about and what it actually does and how it can help you. So welcome, Joy.
Thanks, Mandy. It's great to be here.
Brilliant. So if we could start right from the beginning and just if you can tell us a little bit about how you came to found Tech Pixies.
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of by accident, actually. I had started a company when we moved. We used to live in Switzerland, and when we moved to England, what I had built in Switzerland was no longer relevant. I had built a website helping people connect with each other in Switzerland who are expats. And then, of course, I come over here and everyone speaks English. So I didn't need to create a website that did that. So I got this idea that I would take all my website building skills and I would build websites for charities, and that I would employ young people who were not in education, employment, or training. So we call them NEETs. And I would give them an internship, and then I'd get an unpaid internship and then a paid position over a 6-month period. And they'd learn how to build a website, and then they would actually build a website. And I did that for about a year, and we worked with 18 young people, many of whom are still in contact with me today, doing really cool things in the workplace. But there was a point where I was talking to investors about the next phase of the business and what I wanted to do. And people started saying to me, like, well, my wife needs these tech skills that you're giving to teenagers, and she's got an Oxford degree and she's got a Cambridge degree, and they're not working, but they're brilliant women. And so I had investors saying my wife needs this, and then I had the mums of the teenagers saying, I need this, like what you've given my son, I want for myself. And so it gave me an idea that actually I could create what I called at the time a digital skills school. And I did some research, and there were a few digital skills schools around. They weren't called digital skills schools, but like Makers Academy in London. And you had to go to London. And so anyone who didn't live in London, there was no opportunity. For me, I live in Oxford. It's 3 hours to get into London. If you're on the bus, probably door to door, which is the cheaper route than the train. The train's still an hour and a half door to door, maybe 2 hours door to door. So you're going to do 3 to 6 hours of commuting just to get in. And then that's a full-time program. And of course, if you've got babies, which I did, I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, which, they were compared to the 14-year-old and 13-year-old that they are today. They were, they needed a lot of attention and time and parenting, and they still need that now. And I just thought, I can't do this. I can't commute into London every day to learn a skill, and neither can other people that I know, especially moms. And so that gave me the idea to start a digital skills school in Oxford. So at least I could help people in Oxford. And very much modeled on the original sort of digital mums model. If I don't know if you remember them, they don't exist today in the capacity that they were in when they first started. But it was that idea that we're going to train mums up with digital skills. The one thing I decided to do was not focus just on mums, but focus on women. And so we applied for money from the government because I had no money at that point to start a business. I think a lot of women who've been home looking after children for a couple of years, their savings has dwindled, and they don't have the income. So I heard about grants, and I didn't know that they existed, but I heard about grants. And actually, one of the things that I did do that I think was really important was I leaned on my own intuition. So I knew I couldn't pay for it. I knew I didn't have the money to start it. And I knew it was going to take money because it was going to take a lot of time and effort. And so I had gotten in on the local enterprise partnership network. And I don't think a lot of women are aware of the local enterprise network, but it's most parts of the country, you're tapped into a local enterprise network, and they're really great at connecting you to people. And so I had gotten involved in that when I was building my website business. And I'd met this guy who was just uber connected, and he was called a network navigator. So he helped you navigate the networks. So I met this guy who was a network navigator, and he navigated all the networks. And I called him up and I just told him my idea. I just had this intuition, like if I call this guy he might be able to help. So I called him and I said, I've got this idea to build a digital skills school in Oxford. These are all the problems with the digital skills schools in London or whatever. And he said, that's a great idea. And you're never going to believe this, but a grant has come across my desk. And I literally applied for the grant. It was £16,000. And then I got it. And within a couple months, we were up and running. And that really is how we started. And the idea was to help actually 10 women go back to work after a career break. And it could be for any reason, whatever they had a career break for. Most of them were mothers. But we had some women who'd been out of work for 6 months, and we had some women who'd been out of work for 22 years. And we had 100% success rate. It was a face-to-face program. And that's when I thought, okay, we should roll this out. And so that's the starting point, I guess. It was in a cold church hall around the corner from me in Oxford. And yeah.
Wow. Wow. So it's really important that the idea, but also the support that you got as well, and the grant, obviously funding is really important. But then so you had the small number of people that started with the first cohort. Did it grow gradually, or was there such a demand that it kind of built quite quickly?
Well, no, actually, it went backwards. So we had the 12 women, and part of the grant funding was that we got to send an email to 80,000 people in Oxford that were signed up to the local county, newsletter, the county council newsletter. So we had more applications than we could give places. So we had, say 25 applications. We could only give 12 places. They were funded places mostly. So we had to be, we had to cut, we had to say no to 50% of the applicants. But then part of the caveat with the grant was that we would continue our service after the grant was finished. And I believe in, I'm a person of my word. I'm a person of integrity. And so I said, okay, I can commit to that. We will continue afterwards. And the funny thing is that we had no list, we had no social media following, we had no connections. And so when I went to launch it the second time, I had 3 people who said yes. And also the first time it was funded by the government. So the second time when we ran it, they had to fund themselves. And so the way I got them into the program was I said, okay, you're going to pay me £500 to do the program for 3 months. And then I'm going to pay you £600, £200 a month to then work on client accounts. Because at that time I had a few clients that I was doing social media for privately. So then I would bring them in to manage those accounts. And I ended up paying them more than they paid me. I mean, but in that sense, so we definitely went backwards before we went forwards. But we did get to about 100 women in our program organically. I used to run information sessions on Eventbrite for free. And people would come in person, and we had a really good conversion rate when we spoke to people in person, and everything was in person. So from 2015, 16, well, 15 was a pilot program. We set up the company officially in 2016, but 2016, 2017, and 2018, everything was done in person. We had we had a partnership with Grant Thornton, and they gave us an office in London and an office in Oxford, and that's where we ran our stuff. But then in 2019, I was really almost burnt out. It was it took us that long to grow. It took us 4 years to grow to 100 people. And I thought, I can't do this, and there wasn't enough money coming in. And that's when we switched to an online program. And that's when in 2018, 2019, I raised money because, again, I didn't have the money to fund a platform. And I didn't know what I didn't know. So I had to invest in a lot of training. How do I launch an online course? What does that look like? And so that's when I really had to up level. And that's where we raised our first sort of tranche of investment money. And that took the business online. And that's where we grew from 100 to 1,000 was from 2019 to 2024, really. So
yes. Well, very pressed. I mean, doing that just before the pandemic hit as well.
Perfectly placed for the pandemic. Our largest cohort still to this day, the largest cohort we had still to this day is the April 2020 cohort, where we had 171 ladies sign up for in one week. It was just, we'd never had that sort of traffic, but it was crazy cool. And we still have some of those ladies that are still involved in our program now. They're alumni members, part of our network. So it's very cool.
So what exactly do you offer them, and what have you sort of tracked where they've gone? You've got this alumni cohort, so presumably you kind of keep in touch and what people have gone on to do afterwards.
Well, the cool thing is, I mean, we only offered social media training and coaching for a really long time. I would say up until 3 years ago, we only had one offer. Then 3 years ago, I introduced a life coaching option, and then I also introduced a business coaching option. And what that did was it served the women that were finishing our programs but didn't want to leave our community. They wanted to continue to stay in a structure of support, which I think is really important. Like running a business by yourself is really hard. And we had a lot of women running businesses and they just needed that support. They needed that guidance. And so I turned everything I knew about business into a course called Business Beyond Social. So people who'd finished the social media course could then do Business Beyond Social. And we also built in this life coaching element. And we've always had life coaching as part of our training, which is, I think, one of our USPs. But because I had been retrained as a neuro coach and spent a couple of years really studying how the brain works, I then really integrated into our training a lot of neuroscience-based techniques that have sped up the success rate of our students massively. And so they've wanted to stay in the system as well. So we have three main programs, we have three main memberships, and a lot of people will renew year on year to continue to get, that support and that coaching and training.
So there's quite a lot of overlap between those different things that you're offering. And yeah, because one of the things that you did was a big survey, wasn't it? And looking at confidence issues and that kind of thing. So part of what you're doing in sort of upskilling people and that kind of thing is to build confidence through education. And I guess the life coaching is also part of that, and the business coaching, obviously, because as you said, it's quite difficult doing it on your own, especially when
Well,
you've got small children.
we tried to sell a confidence course. No one wanted to raise their hand and say, I have low confidence. So no one
Yeah.
bought it. And I remember thinking, but everyone wants, like, what I'd identified the problem as confidence. Like, we knew the problem was confidence. We knew women didn't have confidence with digital skill sets. And we also knew women didn't have confidence with like charging what they were worth. So we knew women were working for free. It's in our genes, right? We're only 2 generations away from women being paid to do anything. But there's millennia of women who never worked or were never paid for their work, which is probably more important. They've always been working, they just haven't been paid for their work. And so what I realized and identified was the real core problem wasn't actually the skills, let's say, it was the confidence. But what we learned, and this is what was really fun, what we learned is if we can get you confident enough to take off your invisibility cloak and go on social media, well, you can do everything else. And we used to say to people, if you can learn 9 different pieces of technology in 9 weeks, now we teach 5 pieces of technology in 5 weeks. But if you can learn that many pieces of technology, you can learn anything. And once women started thinking that way, that was what was really cool. And so the things that people have gone on to do are just phenomenal. And that's been really fun to track them. And we have a podcast called Sparkle and Thrive. We're considering a name change at the moment, but that podcast has 258 episodes. About 240 of them are our own student success stories, women who got their confidence back, learned a new skill set, went out into the world and gave their gift to the world. And, and what's happened as a result. Women who had 17 years out, looking after families and hadn't earned a paycheck since then, going back into jobs, and women who, have started businesses and are now making more 2-3 times what they were making when they were working for somebody else. So it's really fun to share those stories for sure.
Definitely, and I guess they're running their own businesses and things. They're able to have the kind of flexibility, which we know is a huge thing for for mums, parents generally. So yes, that must be really. I don't know. It must be lovely to see all those people going out into the world, and with the social media skills. I mean, so much is based on social media these days. Is all about how you promote yourself on social media. So that's actually a core skill for businesses of any kind, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. We have people in all sorts of different businesses. We've got accountants and authors and artists, Reiki therapists, yoga teachers, Pilates teachers, social media managers. That was really what we were originally teaching people how to be social media managers, and they would set up their business as a social media manager. But it turns out, with the pandemic, a lot of people thought, well, I'll just go run my own business instead of, because I got to do something. And going online was a great opportunity. So we really literally have people from, brand managers to, copywriters to designers. We even have like a high end Parisian fashion designer, like in our midst. So it's really, really fun. And what we've also found is because people are in the program, they get a certain way of thinking, right? Because we do a lot of mindset work. So we have a lot of like-minded people who are very open-minded, very growth-oriented, very, very much into learning. But we find that they network with each other, and we're now getting like people are giving each other jobs, and people are working on. So there's actually now a marketplace within the network where someone needs a copywriter, someone needs a designer, someone needs a website built, and people get to be the go-to people in the community, and they get hired, and there's a lot of cross-pollination, and so that's been really cool as well to see. But yeah, just the other day I got, and this is what happens all the time, but I just got this little message in my messenger from a gal who did our course 4 years ago. She's one of our star stories. She had during the pandemic, she lost her job. She moved back in with her parents. She was a supply teacher for maths, and she's like, I have no idea what I'm going to do now. And she ended up creating a guide for parents whose children had math anxiety, putting it out on Facebook. She got a lot of people downloaded her guide, and she ended up having a list of a couple hundred people. She started saying, look, I do tutoring. She was fully booked by the end of the year. So she went from having a dream of 5 people that she was tutoring to having 21 people that she was tutoring. And then she ended up doing group coaching, and eventually she bought her own home. And then recently she had a brand new baby, and there were some complications and some challenges with that. But she messaged me and she said, if I hadn't had your mindset training, I wouldn't have been able to get through the last 9 weeks. And it just, and that was on a personal level. It had very little to do with her business and more what was going on in her life. And I think that's the most important thing. We recognize women as people, and, they need these skill sets, but they also need a mindset to deal with anything that comes their way, to recognize that they're greater than any situation, circumstance, or condition that they're facing. And it's moments like that that are really special. And last week I got to, someone sent me, one of the ladies that is in our group, Sarah Glassy, she sent me 2 years ago, she sent me a gift card to do afternoon tea at Blenheim Palace, saying thank you for helping me get back into work. And she's been promoted again and again. And, and I got to go do that. And that was really fun. So I feel really special that I get to connect with these women, because they're really amazing women, and they're doing incredible things in the world. And it's fun. It's fun when they say thank you, but it's really about them doing the work. But it's definitely fun when you see them thriving.
Yeah, amazing. What a lovely what a lovely thing to do and see. And what do you need any particular skills, do you think, to do the course, or just the kind of the right mindset, or not, maybe not the right mindset because you're teaching mindset, but just the need to the desire to sort of retrain or upskill or whatever they call it these days.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing I say to people is, look, you've already got transferable skills, right? If you like, there's a lot of things that women they've got great transferable skills, right? They're great communicators generally. They've got a great eye for design generally. I'm being general here, but it's true, for a majority of the women that we work with. What I would say is that we run what's called a superhero boot camp. So we run a free 1 week experience where women can come and really imagine what their life would be like if they were able to learn these new skills, what they could do with the money that they earn. I tell my story, that I wanted to get someone to help clean the house. I wanted to take my family on a holiday that I paid for myself, and those were some of my ambitions when I first started. And so, we get them thinking, okay, what would become possible for me if I could earn money using a technical skill like social media? And then we actually talk to them about how social media works today, how the networks work. And we give them examples of women that are learning, that are using the different networks. And then we teach them sort of the secret to social media, which is it's not about social media. It's about your mailing list, and it's about building up that mailing list and how you get people onto the mailing list off of social, et cetera. So that boot camp gives people a really good idea of whether or not they like this, the way that we teach. It also gives them a really good idea of whether or not they're interested in the mindset stuff, because we get them to create a vision for their life. And, if they're not into that, that's probably going to, send them the other way. So we do that free training to help people get an idea of whether or not they're a good fit for the community. And really the thing that we're looking for is someone who wants to grow. We have and wants to learn. We have all of our values are in the word sparkle. So supportive, positive, authentic relationships with women who are keen to learn and want to be empowered. And that's really what we're looking for. You don't have to have any skills whatsoever. In fact, we're brilliant if you don't have any skills, because we can help you get there. And even if you do have the skills, we have people come in our program that are already social media managers, and they just want to know what they don't know. And there's always something they don't know, because there's stuff I don't know, as social media changes every day. So a willingness to learn is really one of the things that we were looking for.
Yes, that's one of the questions I was going to ask you about social media, because it is changing all the time, isn't it? And there's new platforms being added and new things that all the platforms do, and keeping on top of it is it's quite a full-time job. So have you evolved over time in terms of what you're teaching, I guess, in terms of the social media?
Yeah, definitely. TikTok was not on we were not teaching TikTok originally. We've dropped teaching X/Twitter Live because it's a network that's not really working for a lot of women's businesses at the moment. But we still have it in the curriculum. But really the thing, and then YouTube, we lead with YouTube. I think YouTube is really a very important social media network. As the others have kind of gone up and down, YouTube has stayed pretty consistently powerful. And so we teach that as well. But I think, I think obviously there's AI now involved in social media. So we do have some AI training to help people make sure that they're, leveraging the power of AI, but also, not using AI as a tool for creativity, but not necessarily copying and pasting everything AI says, because it's sort of generic now. You can sort of tell when something's AI and when it's not. But yeah, I think that the goal really is to make sure that that the course evolves and that it's up to date. And what we do is on the coaching calls, we have a coach for every single network. So we have a coach for YouTube and TikTok, it's the same coach, but we have a coach for Instagram, we have a coach for LinkedIn, and we have a coach for Facebook. They're specialists in those networks. So when someone comes onto a coaching call, they can ask a very specific question and the coach will know the answer, because that's what they work in full time. And that's been really cool. And we have them give an update every time they run a coaching call. So that's why our members stay connected, because they can watch the replays every week and they can get or they can come live, but they can get in 5-10 minutes. Okay, here's what's changed since the last time we did this call. So it's not, I remember someone saying it's very ambitious to create a social media training program because it changes so much, but we focus on the things that don't change. And then we have the coaching calls for the things that, in the curriculum, we focus on the things that don't change. And in the coaching calls, we focus on the things that do change. So we're always able to stay on top of it.
Yeah. I'm, as a journalist, we're becoming more and more having to promote everything that we write on social media, and it's mind, trying to keep up with it all. It's so difficult, but I think it's probably in so many different facets of people's work these days that social media is crucial. So it's not just a social media manager sort of role, but everybody kind of needs to be aware of it. Do you see that reflected in kind of demand for what you're doing?
Well, I think everyone thought that AI was going to replace social media managers. Like, you don't need a social media manager. You can just get an AI assistant and they'll do all your social media. And you see it all over the internet, like these programs that promote, like, just switch over to AI and it'll do it all for you. At the end of the day, I think that you still need someone running the AI, right? So even if you are going to switch that, someone's got to understand how to actually manage it. Personally, I think what's interesting is that there's so many skill opportunities beyond social media. So once people understand social media and they know how to manage it, they might go, you know what, social media is not for me, but I want to go into, like, we had a gal who did our course. She passed it with flying colors. and she could have gone, and she even went and got a job as a social media manager. And then she's like, you know what? I don't want to be a social media manager. But she did want to do flowers, and she didn't know exactly what she wanted to do, but she wanted to go into like the florist industry. She's now become a cut florist, like a cut flowers, fresh cut flowers florist. And she grows her own flowers and then cuts them. And she has, obviously clients that love her, et cetera. Well, she leveraged social media. She leverages social media to grow her flower business. So, I always say to people, it's sort of like Dr. Seuss's machine. You come in one way, and then as you go through the system, you transform and come out another way. And you may not do what you started out to do. Sarah, the example I just gave you a few minutes ago, who sent us the Blenheim Palace afternoon teas. She's an account executive for a paid advertising company. And that had nothing to do with what we taught her, but because she got the confidence with the social media stuff, she was then able to negotiate a job where then she learned how to do paid advertising and then worked her way up to the top that way. So what's fascinating to me is what people do with it. They don't necessarily become social media managers or stay social media managers, but they go on to do really cool things that they never would have expected, because the boost in confidence and this idea that I can learn anything, once they really get that in their brains, that's when, the light bulb goes off and it's like, oh, I could really do anything, so that's really fun.
Yeah, and also learning. I mean, we're going to have to keep learning all the time, as we're in a very turbulent period, and it doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon. So just getting into that sort of mindset of just being open to learning and to keep learning is important too, isn't it? What do you think is next for Tech Pixies?
Oh, that's a great question. We're in the middle of that right now, that very question, because we have sort of the coaching, the training, the network, because we have an emphasis on social media, on business, and on life. It's gotten a little bit like, for the person who's just coming in, it's like, what direction do I go in? We also are a social enterprise. So about 40% of our students are below the poverty line. They're on universal credit. And we need ways to fund, to help fund their training. It's they only pay a fraction of what it really costs, even though they pay the full amount over time. We're still training them with a fraction of what we need. So there's a lot of things that we're looking into, but probably switching into a model that works with careers, helping women focus on their careers, a model that focuses on entrepreneurship, which I'm very passionate about, women becoming entrepreneurs. And then like a third pillar, really, which is the foundation, sort of the kick/charity side of the business, and sort of separating them out so we can become known, for those tracks, if you will. But it's, we're having all those conversations right now. I think the cool thing is I had a goal, to help 100 women. That was my initial goal. Well, my initial goal was 12 women. Then it went to 100 women. Then it went to 1,000 women. And we are only 35 women away from that goal of 1,000 women. And so now I'm thinking, okay, how do we roll this out to 10,000 women? It took us 4 years to get 100 women in the door. It took us 4 years to get 1,000 women in the door, and another 4 years to get 1,000 women in the door. I don't have 100 years to get 10,000 women through the door. So we got to collapse time a little bit. And if we were really ambitious and we wanted to help 10,000 women in the next 4 years, what would that look like? So those are the questions we're asking ourselves right now.
Amazing. All power to you, I say. And as you say, talk about sort of entrepreneurship and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's really, because that gives people kind of more ability to use all the skills that they have, but also have some sort of level of control over what they're doing, and they're able to work things around their lives. And we know that that's really important. But we also need more more women entrepreneurs, so that we can have a kind of I guess mass impetus to increase funding for women entrepreneurs, which is still so low.
Yeah, I mean, well, the Innovate UK debacle that just happened this week, we were one of the people that had applied. And yeah, they said they were going to give 50 scholarship, 50 funded, they were going to fund 50 companies, women led, with £75,000. The application itself was quite laborious. It took a lot of work. And then they sent an email saying, we're only going to fund 25 people. And they had 1,500 people start the application, 1,200 people finish the application. The number of female-owned businesses has skyrocketed in the last 4 years. So, I mean, this is, and interestingly enough, they got a huge backlash when they announced they were only going to fund 25 businesses instead of 50, and they had to backtrack, and then they had to reissue 25 more. But there is not adequate funding for women's businesses. And as much as the Allison Rose report, the Rose report, which everyone talks about a lot in female entrepreneurship, as much as that shed some light on the issues, there have been years in my business where I have not been able to get funding. Like I haven't been able to get access to credit. I haven't been able to get access to loans. I haven't been able to get access to investors. Investors said no. Banks said no. Grants said no. And so we've got all this great information that women's businesses are great, but then the funding is still not there. And so for many women, they have to bootstrap. And fortunately, the system we teaches women how to bootstrap. But it's nowhere near, funding is nowhere near where it needs to be for women, and particularly for women of color as well. Like I heard a statistic the other day. I was reading Arlen Hamilton's new book, Your First, Earning Your First Million or Your First Million. And she was saying Black women get something like 0.02% of venture capital. Women in general get something like 3%, but Black women get 0.02 or 0.2%. It's just crazy. It's crazy. So we got a long way to go in terms of funding, but I think that shouldn't stop women from having a go and getting started. And in fact, they're the women that will invest in women, right? So so do it, start a business, make a ton of money, and invest in other women to do the same. So that's one of my goals.
Yes, well, absolutely. And you've shown in everything that you said about it's not, well, apart from confidence and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, women have a lot of obviously transferable skills and things, but a lot of creativity and adaptability. Certainly, adaptability to change is key. So thank you so much, Joy. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And if you want to find out more about Tech Pixies, it's techpixies.com. So go there and find out more. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.